I never should have taken that job. It was supposed to be a simple forestry survey, document the health of Black Hollow Forest, note wildlife activity, and assess any hazards. The place had a reputation. People in the nearby town spoke about the disappearances, the strange sounds, and the stories of things lurking in the trees. But I wasn't one for superstition. I was a professional, a field researcher. And I needed the money. The moment I stepped into the forest, I felt it. The silence. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive, heavy stillness. My footsteps on the damp ground sounded wrong, like the earth was swallowing the noise before it could escape. I shrugged it off, adjusted my pack, and pressed deeper into the woods. The trees were massive, their bark blackened and rough, twisting in unnatural ways. Some had strange carvings, deep, jagged symbols that looked neither human nor animal. I snapped pictures, thinking maybe they were old markings from the indigenous tribes that once lived here. As I moved through the underbrush, I noticed something else, the absence of decay. No fallen branches, no rotting logs, no animal carcasses. It was like the forest refused to let anything die, or it hid the remains. By dusk, I set up camp near a narrow creek. My tent felt like a fragile barrier between me and the vast unknown. As darkness fell, I became aware of the sound, or rather, the lack of it. The silence stretched on, pressing against my ears. Then, just past midnight, I heard it. A whisper. It was faint, barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. I held my breath, straining to listen. The voice was soft, like wind through dead leaves, and it was calling my name. I bolted upright, my flashlight slicing through the blackness. Nothing. Just the gnarled trees standing like silent sentinels. I told myself it was the wind, a trick of my exhausted mind. But as I lay back down, I heard it again, closer. Sleep never came. I sat in my tent, gripping my knife, waiting for dawn. When the first light crept through the trees, I packed up and moved deeper into the forest, hoping to finish my survey quickly. But the deeper I went, the stranger things became. The trees started shifting, not while I was looking, but every time I glanced away, the landscape seemed different. A boulder that had been 10 feet away was now beside me. A fallen tree I had stepped over was suddenly standing. The symbols on the bark appeared more frequently, deeper, fresher. My GPS lost signal. My compass spun uselessly. I was lost. Then I found the cabin. It was ancient, half swallowed by the forest, its wooden walls covered in the same strange carvings. The door stood slightly ajar, swaying gently, though there was no wind. I should have turned back. I should have run, but something pulled me forward. Inside, the air was thick with decay. The walls were covered in old, faded photographs, black and white images of people standing among these very trees. Dozens of them, some dated back over a century. But what made my stomach turn was the last row of photographs. They were recent, in color, and one of them was me. I stumbled back, my pulse hammering. The picture showed me standing in the forest, my backpack, my clothes, everything exactly as I was now. But there was something behind me. A shape, tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to swallow the light. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned, flashlight trembling. The cabin was empty, but the door was closed now. Something moved in the corner. A shadow stretched unnaturally, spilling across the floor. The whisper came again, but this time, it wasn't from outside. It was inside, right next to my ear. I ran. Bursting through the door, I crashed into the underbrush, branches tearing at my skin. The forest was alive now, twisting, shifting, closing in around me. The whisper followed, growing louder, turning into laughter. A dry, brittle laughter that came from everywhere and nowhere. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, days. The forest had no end. My food ran out. My water was gone. I was starving, exhausted, broken. But I kept moving, kept searching for a way out. Then, one morning, I saw the road. A sliver of gray through the trees. I stumbled toward it, collapsing onto the asphalt, gasping for air. A truck driver found me, barely conscious, rambling about shadows and whispers. He took me to town, where the locals listened with solemn faces. They didn't doubt me, they just looked at me with pity. "You made it out," one of them said. "But it won't let you go." I left that town, left the state, but the whisper followed. It's in the corners of my apartment, in the rustling of leaves outside my window, in the hum of my radio at night. I still see the trees shift when I'm not looking. Still see my own photograph, hanging in places I've never been. I never should have taken that job. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember leaving my apartment. But when I woke up, I was in the forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rot. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches reaching like skeletal fingers toward the sky. My flashlight flickered, struggling against the unnatural darkness pressing in from all sides. I turned in frantic circles, trying to orient myself, trying to find anything familiar. But it was Black Hollow Forest. The same gnarled trees, the same oppressive silence, the same ancient, unknowable presence watching me from the shadows. I didn't scream. There was no point. No one would hear me. I started walking. The ground was soft beneath my feet, swallowing the sound of my footsteps. Every tree looked the same, carved with the strange symbols I had seen before. But now, they were moving. Not shifting when I looked away, moving while I watched. Bark split like flesh, knots in the wood widened like gaping mouths, and the symbols twisted, rearranging themselves as if the trees were speaking a language I could not understand. Then the laughter started. It came from everywhere and nowhere, dry and brittle like dead leaves scraping against stone. It was inside my head, under my skin, curling around my thoughts. I knew that laugh. It was the whisper, the thing that had followed me, that had marked me. The thing that had been waiting for me to come back. I walked faster, then broke into a run, dodging low branches, stumbling over roots that seemed to reach for my ankles. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. But the forest had no end. The deeper I ran, the thicker the trees became, pressing closer, closing in. The darkness grew heavier, tangible, a living thing curling around me like vines. Then I saw the cabin. The same rotting wood, the same door, hanging open in silent invitation. The same photographs inside. I stepped forward unwillingly, my body no longer entirely my own. A cruel familiarity settled over me, like I had been here before, not just once, but many times. The photographs were waiting. I saw my face staring back at me, over and over, in every stage of decay. Pictures of me in different years, different clothes, different versions of myself, some with hollow eyes, some gaunt and starving, some barely recognizable as human anymore. And then, the final row. Empty frames, waiting for the last picture. I turned slowly. The whisper was no longer a whisper. It was a presence, standing just behind me. I could feel it, tall and looming, its breath cold against the back of my neck. I didn't need to see it. I already knew what it looked like. The thing in the forest. The thing that had followed me. The thing I was always meant to become. A camera clicked, and everything went black.